Talking Sooner football with Eric Bailey, Tulsa World beat writer. I'm Guerin Emig. In for Eli Letterman, Oklahoma's co-beat writer. I'm the columnist who used to do this show with Eric. I miss you, man. It's good.
Welcome
To
back.
be back
Yeah.
on the air with you.
Old times, no doubt.
This is something that we do every week. We appreciate you listening or viewing. If you're taking us in video form, you can download our podcast every week if you're into the Sooners, OSU, or what Bill Hasten and I have to say, courtesy of Google, Apple, and Spotify. We appreciate your attention. We have a lot to get to, Eric, starting with a performance in Lincoln. Well, I tell you what, you want to talk about last week or this? This is a pretty compelling week with Brent Venables reuniting with his alma mater and his old mentor, Bill Snyder. Even though Bill's no longer on the K-State sideline, that's a storyline. The Wildcats are coming off a weird loss to Tulane. What intrigued you more, this game or OU's complete complimentary football, as Venables would say, performance in Lincoln?
I think really looking back before we go forward, I was really, impressed with how Oklahoma was really able to just make that a one-sided game. You wondered going into the road game, even before fall camp started, this was the game everyone circled. Okay, we'll learn a lot about Oklahoma in this game. Now, that being said, I didn't realize Nebraska was as down as they are. We saw it on TV, but to see it in person and just see Oklahoma bigger, faster, stronger, by a wide margin across the board, it was really a lopsided game. But that being said, Oklahoma did face a little adversity, being down 7-0 early, was able to come back and score 49 unanswered points. So before moving forward, just a quick look back at that game, just so impressed with how they played in all three phases. You're right. Brent Venables mentioned that all three phases were on fire on Saturday.
It was encouraging to see the offense perform well when Dillon Gabriel didn't have his A game. I mean, he had moments that were sharp. The touchdown pass to Jalil Farouk comes to mind immediately, the 25-yarder there that really helped build that first half tidal wave. But for them to still put up 49 points without Gabriel, and he himself after the game said he missed on things he wishes he hadn't. That bodes well. Now there are going to be those who say, "Well, that's because Nebraska doesn't know how to tackle," and that might be part of the problem. But if you're looking at this from an OU perspective, that bodes well, I would think.
I think so. And out of the three games, this was Dillon Gabriel's roughest game, and they win 49-7 or 49-14 up in Lincoln. And you're right, he missed a few things. I mean, the long pass to Jalil Farouk comes to mind that could have ended up in a touchdown. He missed an early screen pass that it was blocked perfectly. I think it was the third series. Everything was set up for a long gain, and he missed on a screen pass. There were just some little misses that you didn't see in week one and week two, but fortunately, if you're an Oklahoma fan, it didn't impact the game. But those are things that, as this conference season starts up, they're really going to have to hit on, and they're going to take advantage of the opportunities. And I think the good news, too, if you're Oklahoma and if you're Brent Venables, is that Dillon Gabriel realizes that he knows what he did wrong. He knows what he can fix, and he's going to try to get done against Kansas State on Saturday.
Defensively, the big plays were there. The splash plays, I think, is what the kids call them today. TFLs and sacks. The defensive line was particularly disruptive. I want to ask you something, Eric. I think what fans are doing, they're seizing all the numbers that are happening under Brent Venables that maybe weren't under Alex Grinch in the previous regime, and they're saying, "Aha, he has in fact fixed what was broken with regard to." Again, big difference-making plays. Are we ready to go? Are you ready to go there yet? Or again, is that more reflective of the fact that they've seen opponents they should do that too, and we'll see in fact if things have been repaired moving forward once we get into better quarterbacks and better offenses in the Big 12 Conference? Where are you on that?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think you're seeing just an aggressive nature defensively, and I kind of put Deshaun White on the spot this week when we were talking to him after practice. I just asked for a little comparison between last year and this year, and the first thing he said is, "I don't like to compare things," which I understood. It's a tough question, but then he turned around and said, "We're more aggressive this year." So I think that's just noticeable. That's easily noticeable to fans, and that's something that has been impressive. That's led to the TFLs and the sacks. And something else the defensive players were talking about was the three-man front that they showed up in Nebraska, that, it was just a different game plan, a different game style, where they were able to bring blitzes from different areas. And the players are relishing in the fact of being playmakers. Woody Washington said there was only one or two corner blitz calls last year, and he never got to blitz, and he's already blitzed this year, and he loves the playbook coming off the corner. So, I mean, when you make it fun for the players, it almost is the result of, being really disciplined in what you're doing defensively, and compound that with the players having fun, and you're getting what you're seeing. But you're right. That being said, the schedule does not get any easier in the next couple of weeks with Kansas State, TCU, and Texas. So we'll see how they can continue to see if they can carry this momentum.
Well, if Kansas State doesn't play any better offensively than it did against Tulane last week and losing in Manhattan, then perhaps the Sooners can expect another party at Owen Field Saturday night. This comes down to stopping Deuce Vaughn, doesn't it? I mean, Adrian Martinez sort of is who he is. He's not. I don't think he's going to go out and throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's just not who he is as a quarterback. It's not who Chris Kleiman is as a head coach. But Vaughn is still there. They still have some pretty good guys on the perimeter. Martinez is capable. He outplayed Spencer Rattler, if I'm not mistaken, in the game a year ago.
Yeah.
In Norman, that Nebraska made much closer than everyone thought it would. So this is sort of an interesting setup for Oklahoma's defense Saturday night.
I think so. I think we're going to see probably the most physical team that they've faced all season. And I think that's going to be the challenge, is they're going to have to match that physicality. And those players know who Deuce Vaughn is. I mean, they know who. I mean, you talk about Adrian Martinez. Yeah, they played against him when he was Nebraska's quarterback last year. But I think everyone in the league and around the country should know who Deuce Vaughn is. And stopping 22 is going to be the most important thing for Oklahoma this Saturday. So I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. And Oklahoma, they're playing so well offensively. They've only given up 3 touchdowns in 3 games. And I think 2 of those touchdowns came against reserves. So, they've been really stingy on defense, and that's the key. I mean, in years past, you see high scoring games. We're just not seeing those shootout scores so far. And again, it's like we keep saying, it's early. It's only been 3 games, but I think this is going to be a litmus test, especially with the run game, with what Deuce is able to do for K-State. The
story yesterday at the press conference with Brent Venables was as much focused on Venables' past at Kansas State. It's been 24 years since he left the nest up there, and yet it's still interesting to hear him talk about his connection to the program and his loyalty. And that's a word that came up yesterday, to Bill Snyder. Now, again, Kleiman's the coach now, Snyder isn't, but I think that's the connection between Venables and Snyder continues to be at the forefront every time the Sooners play the Wildcats, or at least it was even after Brent left to go to Clemson, with Bob and Mike Stoops still on staff at OU. Now they're gone, but Brent's back, and so Snyder sort of reappears right into the narrative. And Eric, one of the endearing things about Brent is he's willing to sort of peel back on how he feels about things. He did it the previous week when he shocked us by having to gather himself talking about the 2000 and 2001 OU Nebraska games, and how he just wasn't in any kind of mental shape to appreciate just how special OU's win was in 2000, or special the rivalry was. Well, here he is now, still very appreciative of Bill Snyder. And I thought it was really cool that he even told a few stories, or used a few analogies to sort of express that sentiment at the presser yesterday.
I thought your column, when you explained, that was in Wednesday's paper, when you explained how tough it was at that Alamo Bowl in '98 for him to go tell Bill Snyder he was going to Oklahoma, and just how he left the room in tears. I mean, loyalty means so much to Bill Snyder. It means so much to Brent Venables, and it was tough. And he was going to get the opportunity to be a defensive coordinator. He would have been a young defensive coordinator at Kansas State, but followed Bob in '99, and I think that it shows you how smart he was too, because he was mature enough to realize he needed to grow as a defensive coach. And coming to Oklahoma, it allowed him to really grow. You look at the blueprint in hindsight, it was perfect going to Oklahoma after Kansas State and not staying at K-State. With all due respect to Coach Snyder at K-State, just to really grow a lot as a coach. I think that was, I thought that was interesting too. But yeah, it's gosh, there's so many storylines coming in this game. We knew there would be. You know, you're looking at a walk on at Salina, and what he was able to do to make the team, and how much he loved playing for the Wildcats. And now he's going back as a head coach and coaching Coach Snyder. I thought the best story was Coach Snyder saying that he got, or Brent saying him and Coach Snyder were texting each other after the Nebraska win. And Coach Snyder said, well, you got 3, go get 4. And then a little bit later, he texted back, but not this week. And Brent said, I think Coach Snyder saw the schedule. So it just tells you how much they're still in touch. And you think about it, going back to Brent and his evolution as a coach. He's worked for Bob Stoops. He's worked for Dabo Sweeney. He's worked for Bill Snyder. That's a crazy tree when you think about it. Just all the years of experience and coaches, 3 Hall of Fame coaches. It really has set the tone for where Brent is right now.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of speaking to Coach Snyder Monday morning about Brent, and there's always been this underlying, and I don't want to call it tension, but curiosity maybe about why Brent never made it back to K-State. You know, all the years he was here under Bob, and then at Clemson under Dabo. And in 05, remember Snyder retired for the first time, and the Wildcats turned to Ron Prince of all coaches. And I remember Venables I was an OU beat writer along with John Hoover at the time, and I remembered we were all ready to track the Venables to K-State storyline, and it just never really materialized. He didn't even interview with the athletic director Tim Weiser at the time, and so there's always been what is there hostility? Is there resentment? Is there tension between Brent and the alma mater over how he left at the end of that 98 season, when everyone thought he'd stay and become Snyder's right-hand man, his lieutenant? And if there was, everyone's doing a pretty good job of covering it up. You don't detect it from Venables. And in talking to Coach Snyder Monday morning, Eric, he had nothing but really flowery things to say about his former assistant and player.
You know, it's going to be tough. And, Coach Venables has coached against Coach Snyder as assistant coach. This is the first time as a head coach. And everyone's probably happy. I think Coach Snyder's happy, and Coach Venables happy that this game isn't in Manhattan. It's in Norman. And, and Coach Venables said that when he gets on the field, he just sees an opponent. He doesn't see the name on the uniform. Right. He wants to make sure they win. But you have to wonder if it's just going to be just different, seeing those white and purple jerseys across the sideline as a head coach, and you're making calls to beat your alma mater. It's going to be curious to see how that plays out. It's a storyline we're definitely going to watch. But once again, it's football, and it's really neat when you, going back to Brent and his relationship with Coach Snyder. So many adjectives were thrown out there, just glowing about how much Coach Snyder means to Brent. And I thought that was interesting too. And it got to be a little sentimental, and it was a good thing though too. I think it was good for Brent to really let the public know how he feels.
Yeah, I asked Venables, when it was my question, that I asked Venables to reach back to that moment in 98 when he decided to leave K-State. Your question was about Bedlam. And here we go again, man. Here we go again. Our good friend Brett McMurphy stirred up a hornet's nest yesterday morning with the report that had quotes from Joe Castiglione and Chad Weiberg about essentially digging Bedlam's grave. This is something that we've all sensed since OU jumped to the SEC, or decided to eventually jump to the SEC over a year ago. Everyone has done nothing but confirmed that it doesn't look good. The rivalry the future of it doesn't look promising, especially from OSU's angle. Mike Gundy made that very clear at Big 12 Media Days in July, when he all but pronounced it dead. And then Brett's national report just got the topic brought back to the forefront. And I thought it was interesting when you asked Brent Venables for his opinion, that he gave sort of a Brent Venables like answer, and the fact that he was in the cocoon, right? He was
last to know. He said, I haven't heard that. I'm last to know. And heck, I'm just looking at this game. But he's been a part of in-state rivalries as a player. He was in the Sunflower State rivalry. Is it Sunflower Showdown? What's it called?
Sunflower Showdown officially.
Yeah, Kansas.
Pretty one-sided showdown when it comes to football, I'm afraid.
Player and a coach. He's been in that one. He's been at OU. OSU Bedlam. I think he's 9-3 when he was assistant coach at Oklahoma, and so he's coached in a lot of these Bedlam games already. And then even at Clemson with South Carolina, they play every year. That's a big in-state rivalry as well. So he's been a part of in-state, and he kind of shied away from really giving a stance on should this game be played. But he did say he's a traditionalist. He said he loves the rivalries. He loves these games. So that was his main answer. I mean, it was something that's always, these traditional rivalries mean a lot to him.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, like you said, when this story broke, Brett did have quotes from both ADs basically patting the grave down, tamping the dirt on the grave for this series. So it was crazy how it stirred up everyone's emotions, both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State fans. And Mike Gundy was pretty animated after his practice yesterday too.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that it looks like we need to relish these right now. The last 3 scheduled games there are. I mean, will it be less than 3? We'll see. But it's going to be weird not having Bedlam on the schedule when that happens, Guerin. That's going to be so strange.
Yeah, there's probably another hour discussion that we need to have about that topic, but we'll save it for. How about we try to save it for Bedlam Week? And we could probably do a podcast every day of the week with all this stuff that's been kicked up in the last year. All right, I want, before we finished, I wanted to ask you about another off the field issue that you hit Joe Castiglione with when you saw him at the OU Board of Regents meeting a few days ago that you presented to readers this week, and that is scheduling, non-conference scheduling, as it relates to the decision to cancel the OU Georgia non-conference home and home. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was interesting to hear not just Joe's response to that and future non-conferences, but his doubling down with you on OU's commitment to stay in the Big 12 through the grant of rights through 2025, when we're all suspecting that there's just no way they're going to run it that deep into the contract. For now, anyway, Joe C. continues to stand by it.
If you just read the headline from last week when it said Georgia, SEC directs Oklahoma not to play against Georgia and Tennessee, you just read the headline, you think, oh man, that means Oklahoma's jumping in the league early. Yeah. And it goes beyond that. This was just because the return games would be when Oklahoma, after 25, when Oklahoma was a conference member. But I asked Joe, we were just joking. I said, I bet you heard a lot of conspiracy theories after that came out. And he started laughing. And he said, you know what? I haven't heard a lot. I've heard some I can't even talk about because they're so outlandish. So he really got hit hard with that. But he said, that's the first thing he reiterated. Nothing changes. Oklahoma doesn't plan to join the SEC till 2025. Interesting enough, he did say, if the Big 12 has not reached out, but they're willing to go to discuss. If they reached out, there will be some discussions too. And another thing is Brent Venables, the new commissioner, he has not made an appointment to come to OU, and he's visiting all these schools. And I asked Joe, has there been any invite, or have they reached out? And Joe just kind of shook his head and just didn't answer. Just kind of indicated nope, it hasn't. Nothing's happened. So that's interesting too. So when we look at the schedule and the non-conference schedule, what's going to be strange is they got SMU for 2023. They're still looking for a 2024 opponent. They want to get some kind of marquee opponent. The original plan was to celebrate the field, Owen Field, this 100th anniversary in the 2023 season. They wanted a marquee opponent to play on the field. Okay, this is strange. On the field that year, which was going to be Georgia. Okay, right. So now it's SMU. So now the celebration is going to turn to 2024 when the stadium turns 100 years old. The field turned 100 in 2023. The stadium turns 100 in 2024. So they're looking for that. They're going to change the celebration back a year.
Man.
So I know. I kind of laughed at that when I was told that. Too. I mean, yeah. So the goal is to find a name opponent in 2024 to play in Norman, which is going to be kind of hard, because everyone's on these, we're just 2 years out from that. It's going to be hard to find an opponent. But you got to look at the realignment across the board, the Pac-12, and how these schools are shuffling around. There may be some opponents in schools in Oklahoma's boat where they can't, kind of give return trips. And there might be some opponents out there floating around. So we'll just have to wait and see. Interesting, really, something I didn't get in the story was the Army trip. that was
Okay.
canceled in 2020. I did ask Joe about the Army trip, and they're still trying to work logistically. They're trying to work that out. They still want to go up there. They still want to play a game up in Army because they owe Army a game.
Right.
It's just with everything with conference realignment, not knowing how many conference games they're going to have once they join the SEC. They still haven't had a chance to really pick a year that would work for Oklahoma and Army, but that hasn't been forgotten. I remember everyone was looking forward to that game in 2020 when that was a game that was going to be a marquee game. And for years, Oklahoma fans were looking forward to that game. So that hasn't been forgotten. It's just one of those things where they have to wait and see what's going to play out.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear because that's a game that deserved to be played. No doubt about it. And Castiglione is the type who, I'm saying this with all this stuff going on about Bedlam, so I've got to be careful as to how far out I go here. But generally speaking, Joe is in tune to tradition, and with all of the classic Bud Wilkinson era OU Army games that were played, you'd like to have a nod to that tradition, if nothing else, and not just have the Black Knights come to Norman, but to go to West Point. It couldn't happen because of COVID. Well, you were talking real quick before we shut down. Wheels turning in my head. He wants to have a marquee game non-conference in 24.
He would like to, yeah, but it's going to be hard again because everyone's schedules are made so far in advance.
Right.
You never know. There might be some puzzle pieces moving around because of USC and UCLA going to the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, excuse me, in 2024. That could alter some schedules too. So you never know. Maybe he just calls USC. It could be our marquee opponent.
Wouldn't that be delicious? Would that not be the best thing ever? Here's what I was thinking, Eric. How about OU actually leaves a year ahead of schedule and is in the SEC by 2024 when the contract, I think that's when I think that's when the ESPN contract kicks in with the SEC. So so they get there with ESPN's help. They get there in 24. All of a sudden, guess who's a non-conference opponent in 2024? Oklahoma State. Could we not solve the world's problems by having OSU come to Norman as the commemorative opponent to celebrate 100 years of Gaylord, whatever the Gaylord family Memorial Stadium? How about that?
I'm sure OSU fans would love to accommodate Oklahoma.
Well, that's right. Yeah. I'm not thinking about how we
need you to be our 100th year opponent. And by the way, we're in this league now, so this is just So, but no, I love the thought, though. I do. I love the thought.
Oh my gosh,
and the wheels are turning.
What a time to be writing about college football, man. Every week's just a carnival, is it not? Is every week not just a mad? You ever see the old movie with John? Yeah. Every week's is just insanity anymore. So okay. Well, we'll try to keep it together long enough to give you coverage of the game Saturday night at Owen Field. The Cowboys. Now I'm off track. The Sooners and the Wildcats kick off at 7:00. You're going to be there. I'm going to be there. We're not sure about our tag team partner, Eli Letterman, out of pocket this week to take care of some stuff. We hope to have him on board. If not, you and I, we've done this before together. We can manage. And we'll ask everyone to devour what we write in the next day's Sunday print edition. If you don't want to wait that long, we'll have all sorts of material online that night from Norman. You can check us out at tulsaworld.com, of course. And if you don't get enough of the stories and columns that we put out every week, then you can always catch the weekly podcast that we perform. And you can do that again via Google, Apple, and Spotify. It's good to see you again.
Hey, you too, Guerin. You too. It's a lot of fun.
Have a good week, folks. We will be back in touch soon.